welcome you all to our panel in this breakout session of the annual law conference. Just before we start, okay, I think we can begin. Thank you so much for joining us. For those joining us online, we really appreciate your patience as we resolved our tech difficulties, the irony being that this is a tech panel. Thank you so much, Diego, for your patience. For this particular part of the conference, we shall be looking at a very interesting topic that is something that has been mentioned over and over throughout the course of the conference regarding legal innovations in the digital era, AI, smart contracts, cybersecurity, and privacy laws. This is a very pertinent topic, and it has come at a very important time where these are areas that are emerging and growing faster than many would like to acknowledge. But with us, we have some very a distinguished panel of industry experts in these spaces, and they're trailblazers because they are the legal minds that have started this discussion on technology law and the like. For purposes of our discussion today, we are going to first of all have a thorough examination on the impact of digital innovation on the legal landscape, with a particular focus on AI. The reason for this is that there's been a lot of talk in the past week, and we are now responding to that request to focus on artificial intelligence, but with these other areas, while we look at these other areas. And the other aim of this session is to also get an understanding of the global perspectives and how Uganda can adopt to and benefit from emerging legal technologies and frameworks. And then also we're going to also just get a deeper understanding of the legal and regulatory challenges and opportunities that are presented by this digital transformation, and how we as lawyers can navigate them. And we hope that by the end of this panel discussion, we shall have acquired knowledge and also obtain strategies on how to succeed in this ever-evolving landscape of technology, and also will also be able to anticipate anything else that could come up. So just before we dive into the introduction of the panelists, I'd like to highlight that due to time constraints, we're not able to have the presentation from one of our panelists today, so we'll just go straight into the panel presentation. I will proceed to introduce our panelists. The first being Robert Mutebi, and he is first of all a technology engineer. He's a forester, a husband, a father, a friend, coach, and a mentor of many young leaders. He's currently the Commissioner, IT and Innovations at the Uganda Revenue Authority. He has held various positions over the years, as Head of Business Technology at DFCU Bank, Senior Manager Technology Solutions at MTN, Data Science, Business Data Science and Strategy Leadership and Tech Professional. And he has over 20 years of team leadership, 18 years of experience in IT and telecom, and many others. He has a postgraduate in data science and business analytics from the University of Austin, Texas. He's a chartered manager and a John Maxwell certified leadership coach. He has an MBA from Leicester University in the UK. He has a master's level diploma, CMI L7 of strategy and leadership from CMI UK. He has a master in technology from Manipal University, a Bachelor of Electrical Engineering from Makerere University, and holds various certificates in that space. So we welcome you, Robert Mutebi. Thank you so much for making the time to be here. and we look forward to benefiting from your insight. Then I would also like to introduce to us Diego Nunez, who's joining us virtually. Diego is a lawyer. He's registered on the Buenos Aires City Bar. He has a law degree from UMSA with an environmental specialization at the Universidad Austral. He's a partner at Nunez and Associates, and he advises on cryptocurrency and blockchain, and he has been doing this since 2020. He's a member of the Elliott Global Alliance of the Latin America Regional Advisory Committee, and he speaks in respect to cryptocurrencies. He's a member of the German desk in the German-Argentinian Chamber of Commerce. Welcome with me, Diego. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'll also introduce another distinguished gentleman, Robert Chirunda, who we all know, and he's a founding partner at Chirunda & Company Advocates. He leads the firm's practice on law, science, and technology. He's the convener of the Center for Law and Emerging Technologies at Macquarie University School of Law, where he has taught for the last 16 years. Privileged to be one of his students. He advises clients in the public and private sectors on the practical and policy aspects of law and technology. He has served on various boards, including the National Task Force for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and various banks. He's a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators and has represented clients in high-stake domestic and international arbitrations, as well as sat as an arbitrator. He's also an active member of the Uganda Law Society, and I'm sure we all know that he has argued several groundbreaking cases at all levels of Uganda's courts of record. He also holds a Master's of Law in Law, Science and Technology from Stanford Law School, a Master's of Laws cum laude in International Trade, Investment and Business in Africa from the University of Western Cape. He has an honors degree in law from Macquarie University School of Law and a diploma in legal practice from the Law Development Center. It's so great to have you here with us, Robert. I'll go on to introduce Mr. Silva Kayondo. He's a leading advisor in digital transformation matters and is widely recognized as an expert in this law and the Fourth Industrial Revolution. He advises large corporates and regulators across a range of across various services in specialist areas such as fintech, or tech fin, convergence, cloud adoption, business process integration, outsourcing, mergers and acquisitions, artificial intelligence, ESG, third-party risk assessments, and financial fraud investigations. He's also very familiar with complex loan association documentation and the PLC suite of documents for project financing, venture capital, private equity investments in both onshore and offshore mandates. Silva has advised across sectors and industries for key clients such as Facebook, Uber, Bolt, Group, Vivendi Africa, Diamond Trust Bank, EcoBank, the Uganda Bankers Association, among others. He holds a Master's of Law from the University of Pretoria, South Africa, and has recently completed a secondment at the Dubai office of the global law firm White and Case LLP, and is currently a partner of Otis Advocates, one of the top tier firms in Uganda. Thank you so much, Silva, for joining us. And then I will finally introduce myself. My name is Rachel Kugonza Kasira, and I'm privileged to be to moderate this panel. I am an associate at Max Advocates and currently the vice chairperson of the ICT cluster of the Uganda Law Society. And so this is a topic or topics that are close to my heart, and I hope that will benefit a lot from the discussion. Okay. So we'll dive right into our panel discussion, and I'll start with Robert. Just give us an insight on why, as lawyers, we should care about artificial intelligence. I know it's something that we're all curious to find out, and we have many age groups among us, some of whom may not really look at it as important, but just to hear from you, why should we care about it?
Thank you, Rachel. It's always interesting to ask the question, why should we care? And I think it's a question that is important to ask at this stage of the conversation. Artificial intelligence is not new, contrary to many sentiments that we hear out there. Artificial intelligence has been around for slightly over half a century now. The question is, why now should we care? It would be, I'm trying to pick my language carefully. I am among very, very able people on the panel. And delighted, by the way, and truly humbled to share the platform with very dear friends and colleagues, and with Diego as well. Legal practice, whichever way you define it, goes through waves. And there will always be events that define legal practice, like any industry. If you go back a short few years, to keep it really simple, in the Ugandan context alone, in the late 80s, everybody wanted to be a criminal lawyer because of the legacy of the Aigihugus, Senior Counsel Kayondo, names that many Gen Zs would not recognize today, unless they read court decisions. In the early to mid-90s, the hot item in town was expropriated property. That was the era of the Peter Muliras, the rise of the James Mukasa Sebugenyis, and so on and so forth. Towards the end of the 90s, and in the early 2000s, the hottest gravy train was securities. That was the rise of the Masembes, and so on and so forth. Then came the Oxtibengana, who upset that model. As you've entered the later part of the end of the first quarter of this century, something very significant has happened. The transformation of legal practice is no longer about individuals or markets. It's going to be about technology. The first impact that AI is going to have is in democratizing the role of a lawyer, from where I sit. There are things that we do today that we will not be able to do 5 years from now because a computer will have done them. Not even 5 years, a few months from now. That change is happening so fast that it would be unfortunate to ignore it. The disruption is not just at the level of what kind of work you do, it is also in how you do your work. I am not aware of any technology or any person who has disrupted the legal industry that way. And it is helpful to point out here that we need to have a leveled understanding of what disruption is. Disruption means different things to different people. I'll tell you what it means to me. Disruption is not being able to do it faster than Silva Kayondo or better than him. There will always be a faster car, a slicker car, one that makes less noise. That's not disruption. That's improvement. Disruption is when one logic displaces another logic. The logic of legal practice has been, in fact, when I was a young lawyer, strange to say that, but many years ago, by the ULS definition, a young lawyer is either below 35 years of age or in practice for less than 5 years, I am neither, which is strange and sad. But the issues that we were dealing with were about, the definition of legal practice was, I work in a private law firm. But really, you're talking about 7 fields. Academia, those of us who teach law, which I'm privileged to have done for the better part of my adult life. those who work with the non-profit sector, there are lawyers there. Lawyers in government who work with the DPP. The biggest law firm in any country is the Attorney General's Chambers, the DPP, and so on and so forth. There are lawyers in the law firms themselves. All that is legal practice. And none of those will be spared. The same way that when I left law school, law firms had typing pools. And this is only a short 19 years ago, when we were doing clerkship at Shanobi Musoke and Co., which firm I truly respect and admire. There was a typing pool. That was in March. Then I got hired at a firm there in Kirkland in September, and I will never forget my first day of work. As we walked in, the managing partner said, "All of you, my office." So at 8 a.m. we went to the managing partner's office, and he said, "What's the first thing you noticed as you walked through the office?" We all guessed what we thought were the important points, and then he said, "Look around you. There is no secretary." And it hit us. It was a strange thing to walk into a law firm then, and there was no secretary. There was no person that you would write, give, they type, they bring to you, edit with a pen, you take back. Those jobs were not unimportant. They were just overtaken. And there are fields of law, there are things we do today for which clients pay us that we will not be doing next year. That's a few months from now. Whether you believe it or not is another matter. It is happening. The second thing is that when we talk about democratizing legal services, we're not just talking about the ability to do work, we're talking about the need for a lawyer. There are certain areas of the law for which clients will not need lawyers. The same way that you Google when you want to know if these symptoms equal to a disease is the same way that there are things that people will be asking ChatGPT and all the other large language models if they really need an answer to do that. It's interesting that a lot of the examples and use cases that I've seen personally are not coming from within the legal industry. Now, what does that mean? It means that, technically speaking, at the lowest level, the solutions that a young lawyer who is able to offer straight out of LDC will not be coming from only lawyers. So that, people ignore how important that is. But I have to point out, I don't know what the numbers are. I just want to mention that the President ULS joined us in the room. Mr. President, we honor you. He might have the numbers better than me, and please forgive me if I get the numbers wrong. When I was chairperson Young Lawyers, which was many years ago, the Law Society was 75% young lawyers. I don't know if the numbers are the same or close by. The numbers are the same. If 75% of our membership is below the age of 35 or has been in practice for less than 5 years, and they are the most affected, you're going to have a problem. Now, in other conversations, but I just want to lay out the playing field for the way it is. AI, and I'm talking about basic AI, not even generative AI. AI democratizes by displacing the lowest levels first. That means that when I hire lawyers next year at my law firm, I will not be looking only for the ability to interpret the penal code, because I will have a large language model that does that faster than the entire LDC class combined. No. I will be looking for a different skill. Does that mean that lawyers will lose jobs? Not necessarily. It just means that the caliber of skill we will require will be more than what my generation and those before me needed. When we came into the field almost 20 years ago now, the first skill you had to learn was to draft well. And I am personally obsessive over good drafting. Believe it or not, there is the lousiest large language model in this world drafts faster and sometimes better than every lawyer I know. Meaning that for me to be relevant in the spaces where I sit, that's not going to be my selling point. It also means that there is now a new market emerging for the solutions for complex questions. Because AI in displacing the routine tasks, is creating new questions. I cannot explain to you how many spaces I have been in where the discussion has been, what is the policy question on this impact of AI? I have just written a paper, 25 pages, on the question whether large language models should get IP rights. Think about it. Silver here is fantastic at IP. And I mean that with the most respect. But think about it this way. I was analyzing two decisions from the UK, one from the UK, one from the US. What you need to prove to get a patent is non-obviousness, novelty, and industry application. To pass the non-obvious test in any jurisdiction, you must prove that basically what you've made is original. I sit down, I use an AI, I generate a large language model. Okay? I generate a molecule for a drug. I apply for a patent. My name is Dr. Taylor. This is a real life case. UK Supreme Court, December 23rd last year. December 21st last year. The reason why Dr. Taylor did not get his patent was because the law says the inventor must be human. So the argument has been that for you to be considered as an innovator or an inventor or whatever term the legislation uses, you must be a human being. Taylor says, no. Let's be fair. I might have put the right prompts into the algorithm. I did not create the drug. The UK Supreme Court did not go into the test of, was this drug non-obvious? Was this drug original? No. They said, Taylor is not a human being. That case was argued by IP lawyers. But the question they're dealing with is really not on IP. So in my paper, I raise the argument and say, if Google as a company can hold a patent, right? Google is not a human being. Why can't a large language model hold a patent? Because if the issue is you must be a human being, let's deal with this issue. We are not even going to non-obviousness. Now, the question then becomes, okay, what does that really look like? If you think about it, Google has structures as a company. The question that this large language model is raising is one of accountability. You see, now, someone must structure the model, and I've made proposals on how we should do it. That's the debate that tomorrow's lawyers are going to have. Or shall I say today's lawyers should be having. If your focus is still on interpreting the Registration of Titles Act, you are not going to be in this conversation, but this conversation will influence how you litigate the statute. Does that make sense? That is disruption. That at every, pick an industry. I don't really care what industry it is. Music. A few months ago, there was this fight about Masavu. What's her name? Azawi. Someone gets Azawi's song, puts the voice of a deceased person. And is that the same song?
Posthumous.
Can you have posthumous recognition of someone who is deceased? Is it still your voice if you are dead? Now, if the kid who played with that song, does he get recognition in the new? My point being, the debate is not about the future. No. And I use these examples to say, go into the academy and we'll have complicated questions about whether large language models should get IP. Come into private practice, and if this person came to you, if Azawi came to you and said, go and sue, do you have a cause of action? That's not tomorrow's question. That's today's question. Now, whether it is medicine, whether it is law, whether it is tax, thank God the topmost person at UAA is here to talk to us about that. That is what disruption looks like. And our industry has always been lucky because we are like Rome in the whatever century it was, when the Bible was only in Latin. And so you walked into the Catholic Church and the priest read for you the Bible. Then came one fellow who translated the Bible to English. That was it. Now, everybody can read the Bible from English, went to Uganda. That's democratizing the faith. That's what I mean by the legal industry is finally being democratized. And the power we've had as people who walk in and dictate what the law is, that is changing. That's the first reason why you must care. The second reason we must care is that whether you believe it or not, lawyers, and I'm going to try and I think I've spoken too much. Let me wrap it up in 2 minutes. Lawyers will always be, in my view, gatekeepers of society. I'll use a very simple example. I always find it striking to look at the list of US presidents. There are more lawyers on that list than any profession. Indeed, the present race has a prosecutor versus a businessman. So it is reasonable to say that for the foreseeable future, lawyers will play a significant role in the politics of the United States of America, which is the world's most powerful superpower today. In whatever society you go, because of our role, it is our duty to pay attention to questions of risk, policy, ethics, and to raise those debates. So whether you're having those arguments in the courtroom, in the workplace, if an employee uses a large language model and they mess up, is there vicarious liability on the lawyer? It is up to us to pay attention to the policy questions, the ethics questions, the philosophical questions. I have my colleague Olga at the office who is a philosopher. And when we get into discussions on philosophy, that's a whole different ballgame. But those are questions we cannot avoid, we cannot delegate, we cannot put off for tomorrow. The technology is here. It is disrupting our industry. It is disrupting every industry. And the people who are getting disrupted outside the legal industry are going to come to us. If a doctor comes to you and says, I've been sued for medical negligence, but I relied on AI, you're going to have to defend that doctor. What will you do? So it is that's the reason why I believe, or those are some of the reasons, Rachel, why I believe that lawyers today must pay attention to what's happening in the AI space, because you have two ways to react. One is what is called pessimist aversion. Wow, me, I have my area, it won't be touched. I think that's not the wise response. The second is to adapt and ask yourself, where do I fit in this mix? And I think that's the wise approach. I thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your insightful input on that question. From the looks of it, I'm not too sure if the lawyers in the room, just thinking about it, that we are ready to embrace AI if our laws are not really anticipating these kinds of changes. It looks like things are changing faster than we can actually address them. And as Robert says, we are the gatekeepers of any society. And so if such issues came up, how would we address those issues when there are even no precedents? And I feel that we are at a very important point in this technology revolution. We're here when all this is happening, and that means there's a mandate upon us to actually prepare for that to happen and not to just sit back. So thank you so much, Robert. Focusing now on an area where there's a lot of, say, I know when we mention money, people become, a bit more curious. So when you look at the financial space, I would like to speak to you, Silva, now, and just find out how AI is impacting financial transactions and what sort of regulatory challenges are arising from that. I know that our laws have woken up in some way to this use of innovation in the finance space, but I'd like to hear from you with regard to that.
Okay, thank you. I think, this works fine. Thank you. I mean, once you talk about money, I think you definitely get the lawyer's attention. It's recently that I have read that where 2 or 3 are gathered sharing money, a lawyer shall be in their midst. So, yeah. But anyway, that's beside the point. Maybe what didn't feature in my bio is that I also teach law at LDC. And for me, I'm a very practical teacher. So we are going to pull out our phones. For those who have bundle, I want us to go into Google Perplexity, Perplexity. That's one of, beyond ChatGPT, this one is, for me, what I use. Perplexity, Perplexity, Perplexity. Have you found it? Go on it, click it, open. Have you opened? Down below the link, I think it says continue searching. Have you searched that? No, below get the Android app is continue searching. Have you found it? Where knowledge begins, do you see anything there saying ask anything? I want you to type in anything like draft a Ugandan mortgage deed. Draft a Ugandan mortgage deed. Do you see where you see pro? Then click go pro. What do you see there?
Continue with Google.
No, I think, yeah. Press go. What do you see there? Whatever. So you could say draft a Ugandan mortgage deed. What does it show in the answer there? Are those the terms of the guiding framework for a checklist of a Ugandan mortgage deed?
More or less.
More or less. You could give it another prompt. You can go back or ask follow-up. You could say maybe draft a Ugandan car sale agreement. Draft a Ugandan car sale agreement. Do you see anything there? Yeah. So do I need an associate in a law firm to tell me maybe a checklist? So all this you can go on giving it prompts. How does this relate to finance? Is that the banks will no longer teach you for long transactional documents. They are being automated anyway. You've already seen the one-pager memos. You've already seen those. You've already seen. So the client, you're being paid for the output that you have. So this will significantly cause pressures on legal fees, but also they'll significantly shift work that's going to, to high value work that clients want you to do. But that's not to say all is lost, because me, I play with this. I've been lucky that I started working with AI 7 years ago because it was being taught in a law school where I attended my master's. So I've had longer time to play with it. You can also game it. For instance, you ask the same Perplexity AI, who are the top 10 young lawyers in Uganda? Do you think I feature for you meeting notes when you're on autopilot, or TTER pilot? The other one for drafting is co-pilot. So, but for us, the general rule is that the work must first be done by a human lawyer. We use AI for verification. Of course, there is much more bigger use cases. I will not take you to Litera or something because we use that for mergers and acquisition deals and project finance to do that. So I'm able to generate a due diligence report for that a very short time. But we do, where are the pain points, particularly for financial services? The biggest problem we've seen is fraud, either identity fraud but these days we are also getting AI generated fraud. We've seen that with card payments. For instance, you swipe your card, someone just sees your CVV and the number, and then they wipe money off your account. We've also seen pain points around identity verification, KYC, the famous KYC you hear in banks, because of the challenges with the national ID system. But I think that's being sorted now. The banks are able to plug into the NIRA system and have your NIN numbers for verification and things. We've also seen AI use in credit scoring. Uganda has a tricky business environment, is that people you'll find are borrowing from formal financial institutions, but also they are borrowing from money lenders. So you take on someone and they are heavily leveraged. So all those multiple data centers that can give you visibility over client indebtedness are ripe candidates for AI. The two biggest use cases we've seen taking off quick, for me at least from where we stand, this has been in analytics, because we have many data points. My Twitter page with my personal website are big data points that financial services can use to have an ID over me. That's why you see companies maybe like Facebook in other markets are getting money remittance licenses, that you're able to use your Facebook page because it already has a picture, or they'll take your iris and you're able maybe to look at your WhatsApp page, and it becomes a clearing, and settlement system. So we are seeing payments and telcos taking off quicker, because you'll see banks in Uganda, I think, have less than 10 million bank accounts. But between MTN and Airtel alone, literally, these are holding a third of the country's GDP every month. So they have much more multiple data points. Your telco knows where you live, the route you use. It has all that superior information. It knows who you're meeting, who you're chatting with, and things, which sometimes is not available to the banks. So we're also seeing lots of that. Then, maybe where I will leave it for me, company registration systems. We have the land information system also coming up. The biggest, I think, for me, the most transformative I've seen has been this infamous in Ministry of Finance. Literally, it's centralized government payments into votes and accounts. All these are potential sources of AI. Leave this generative AI. What I've showed you is just text. We've also have solutions that can help you do a PowerPoint presentation in 10 seconds. So for me, with my PowerPoint presentations, those who want, I'll show you all these tools so that you know that I don't have to stress an associate if they invite me to speak at a ULS event, because there will be a text-to-speech converter and things like that. So what can we do? All of us can't go back to school to become software developers or data scientists. As Mr. Chirunda said, I think I have issued already a market guide on AI and how it will impact different sectors. If you're an energy lawyer, maybe you'll be looking at things like smart grids, but also that Yaka meter is beyond that annoying sound. It can be an internet service provider in your house. It can be a security system. It can be an intercom, if you purpose and use it well. So I think for me, those are the kinds of things we are heading to. There is more complicated stuff than that, really. If we go into lending and borrowing, I think the Uganda Securities Exchange is going into now some bit of commodities trading. I think they'll be starting with maize and coffee. If you go to the Uganda Coffee Development Authority website now, you'll see that maize coffee prices are listed on there. That is to intermediate. A bank will pick that sort of information there to structure a derivative product, for instance, for a coffee trader, because they'll be seeing the accounts. Oil and gas is here. All that data in Bulisa, wherever, is being picked up, to to feed into sort of oil pricing and metric scoring. I think for me, it's exciting. It's competitive. It's fun. It's good. What I'd advise you, that ChatGPT, keep playing with it. You'll get used to it. Keep giving it prompts. Ask funny things. You'll get really, really nice answers. You could even ask, sometimes I ask what will be the top 10 Ugandan law firms in 2030. You'll get really, really interesting justifications and answers. Sometimes I ask, what makes Silver Kayondo unique? You'll really get to see that it's thought things at a deeper level than I've actually even thought about myself. So I think I'll leave it to that. Maybe in the next part of the presentation, I'll tell you about what we can really, really do to make business out of it, and how legal education in Uganda needs to change to match this space. Maybe I'll also tell you a brief story about why I had to go to teach to LDC, much as I had a very busy law firm to run as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Silva, for that. I think from the look of it, we have learned a lot in terms of what tools exist in the market that we can utilize. And from what you were saying, Silva, it looks like there's a lot of collection of data. And of course, with that collection comes various responsibilities for all players, both in the finance space and even in other sectors where this information is being collected. So I'd like to go to Diego now and just ask him, hi Diego, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
That's
Hi,
fine.
how are you doing?
Just from what our panelists have shared so far, could you just briefly just take us through the global cybersecurity frameworks and their applicability to Uganda? As you had this so much buzz about AI, but also so much data is being collected, which creates certain responsibilities and obligations, but also a potential use of that information in fraudulent actions, just as Silva intimated. So I'd like to hear from you on that.
Well, yeah, actually, it's very interesting because nowadays, more and more, everything is digital. I mean, we are not used to living, living the real world as our older generations would. Everything is digital. Our bank, our data, our social interactions. So we are so much online that we generate a digital trail all the time. And this, of course, generates data. And this data can be used for many uses. Most of them are good. But of course, you can use the data for bad, right? You can get someone to click a link, and then you can withdraw from their bank account or any other kind of scam that we have seen in the past years, and mostly in the past decade. Usually we used to think of robbers as people with guns that would take you on the street and get the money you have on your wallet. And nowadays we are finding that it's much more lucrative for criminals to get you your data, your bank account, and then withdraw everything because you have much more money in your bank account than what you would hold in your day-to-day life. So, I mean, first of all, I would like to think about how much time we spend online and how much power we're giving to the computer we have in front of us, our cell phone, and everything that is behind it, because we are more and more dependent on technology. And this means that all the data that we are putting into, then afterwards will fuel, for example, a criminal attempt, but as well as the AI models or everything else that we have been discussing today. Everything is fueled by data. And this is something that law itself and all even the agreements we make and the judges, we are not contemplating properly data as an asset. Of course, data science is something that's quite new in the world, and of course, law always comes behind. I mean, we get an innovation, we get a new technology, and then it gets adopted. And maybe 5 years, 10 years later, depending on how proactive our lawmakers are, we get a law, and then afterwards we are starting to get some degree of clarity. But as lawyers, we have to be aware of these changes before we even find a proper law that is specific to AI or smart contracts or even data science, because we are going to find the cases before the time that we have the bill. We are going to find many cases that we don't know how to solve. We are going to try to interpret it with the existing regulations and laws. And then afterwards, we are going to have to explain to a judge why we think that this or that solution is correct. And then maybe after precedent and 5, 10, 15 cases of the sort, someone at the Congress would maybe think of starting a new bill or regulation. So it's interesting to try to find the right setting for each kind of innovation that we are finding day to day, because we have to apply like the general criteria that we always we learn in law school, you know, just the general principles of law that are very interesting to apply and very need. We are in dire need to apply them when addressing new technologies. I also wanted to share maybe some thoughts about the debate we find regarding privacy law and how much data life is private, how much do we want to share, and how much the applications we use force us to make public. For example, we have, I'm not going to get into the case, but we have one of the founders of Telegram, that's a software to social media, but also to share messages like WhatsApp and other similar ones we have. He's in jail in France because of the prosecutors believe that as he doesn't moderate the content and he doesn't share some information with the local authorities, he is liable for all the criminal activity that's being performed on Telegram. That, of course, it's a tool to communicate, so you will find almost anything on it. I'm not going to make an appreciation on the case, but if we are going to have a real debate on this, we have to think how much would we want these companies to have access to our information, how much would we want them to moderate them, and at what point should the states and the governments be allowed to prosecute and get this information. Even some of them want to have them without a prior investigation, just have them as a surveillance system. And this is really dangerous, and every country should have these discussions, mainly in these events or these areas in which we have a lot of lawyers. Because of all of us, we understand the importance of law enforcement and prevention of crime. But at the same time, as citizens, we wouldn't want the government to know absolutely everything that they don't need to know about our lives. So I think it's an interesting debate to have. I would encourage you maybe you just had lunch, but over coffee at some point, start having these discussions about how much privacy we would have, we want to have, and we should have on our day-to-day on social media. Of course, as I mentioned before, data as an asset is something that's very strange for us. I mean, we have grown believing that the assets are maybe gold or commodities or, I don't know, oil and gas or other kinds of, maybe shares of a company, even shares of a tech company, we got to understand them. But nowadays, getting massive amount of data is really an asset. You can provide with targeted marketing campaigns. You can get someone you can induce someone to buy or do specific things with the proper data. So it's very interesting how this will evolve, because we are not used to guarding our privacy and guarding our data as we should. And many of these companies, what we call the Web2 companies, that are the very big, I don't know, I don't want to name anyone, but Meta, all the YouTube, all the big tech companies that we use day to day, they do have a lot of data on us and our consumptions and what we look into and what we like. That's very interesting to see what they do with it, because nowadays they are not that much regulated, and they don't have that much obligation to disclose what data they collect. They should actually do this, but they don't, and they are not. They're encouraged to do it, but they are not forced in a way that's really relevant. Which data they collect, what do they do with it, and also, I mean, it's interesting because I think we're getting to an international standard on what we should do with data and what the companies should do with data. However, as I mentioned before, it's something that's so new that it's very difficult to see and to get all the countries to a specific standard. For example, we have high regulatory standards in Europe. Other countries are more free in that aspect, and you can do a lot of things. But of course, for example, if you want to have an app running in Europe, you would have to go to GDPR and be compliant with that. So it's interesting how big countries and unions start providing some basic standard on what data protection should be. Also, well, I mean, as we are talking about AI, I want to make like a link to what the previous speakers were saying. AI is fueled by data. I mean, of course, we are going to prompt, but the context they have in which they will research and provide us with an answer is a lot of data that's maybe available in their locally in their engine, or through internet searches that some of them can do, as they mentioned with Perplexity. So all the data we are putting into an LLM, it's also the asset, and the quality of the answers that the model will give us it depends exactly on what information it has. And that's basically all the data we were talking about. Also, I wanted to address the AI as a tool on our day-to-day jobs. We do use it at the firm, but of course, I mean, I do find it useful for heavy lifting, as I define it internally. We do a lot of research with AI. We can compare documents. We can find different, when you have a long document, or check data, or check something that has that could have been edited. But I do believe that checking and doing a thorough research on what the LLM gives you back is still key for a lawyer. And as I mention often, we do sell trust, and we do sell the need. I mean, our clients need to feel safe, and we do sell safety in some matter. So it's interesting how we do still need at all times to make the proper checks. We cannot trust the AI to write things for us. We can ask for a model. We can ask for a job that would take, I mean, something that an intern would do maybe. But at all times, before putting our signature, before sending out a document, we need to check, because the AI has still some flaws, because they are conversational models. They're not bound to say the truth or be accurate at all times. So the models do hallucinate, do have their problems, and we as lawyers have to check that the answers they give are correct. We do see this also as a threat, maybe, using too much the LLMs, because at some point all of our jobs depend on the intellectual property and the know-how that we are putting into the work. So putting too much information in an LLM that we don't know what they are going to do with it, and if the model is going to learn from our prompt, can be dangerous. We have found some cases of Samsung that some programmer just wanted to check or edit a code or see where the bug was, and he printed and copied and pasted the code he was programming in ChatGPT, for example. And ChatGPT, of course, it was a free version, and the GPT learned from what the programmer put into it. So all the intellectual property, or a part of the intellectual property and the code from Samsung, was disclosed for everyone to use, for example. And in our case, it's something similar. We can maybe put something that we have been developing, some kind of writing or whatever we have been developing at our firms, or maybe in our case, we have 40 years of experience. And if we put this into the model, maybe the model will learn from it, and the next person that puts into, I need, for example, as someone mentioned before, a model for a mortgage, they will get a model for a mortgage from us, plus all the data and the knowledge that it's shared by all the other firms and all the other lawyers and everyone else using the model. So, I mean, this is a problem we see in using it, mostly with the free versions, that we don't know exactly what they're doing with it. Some of them do have a specific policy in which they say what they are doing and what they don't do with data. For you, any GPTs, please do check what is going to become from your prompts. And well, as well, coming back, sorry, I rumbled on because I just had some notes what everyone was talking about before. I want to get back to cybersecurity before closing. Cybersecurity, as I mentioned, we live online, everything is online. We have our bank accounts online, we have our savings online, we have something, for example, our retirement plans. I heard earlier someone talk about the retirement and money when you are older. If we don't trust, for example, the company that holds our funds, all our retirement funds, maybe we won't give the money to them, or they won't be able to hold them as long as we would want them to. So cybersecurity has become something key, because most of the money in the world is traded in an online form, in a digital version. For example, I don't know exactly in Uganda, but here in Argentina, we are not used to using that much cash anymore. We do have digital wallets, we have our bank accounts that are digital as well, and we have the credit cards and debit cards. And everything that is being transacted in this manner is done without any physical element. So this is all in a digital environment that has to be safe, and this applies to everything. Actually, we have everything digital. The data we have, our intellectual property, everything.
I want to go, but things are not ending.
Sorry, someone has the mic on. I don't know who it is. Never mind. Well, I mean, everything is digital right now. So, sorry, I got muted. As I mentioned, everything is digital, and I wanted to share a case we have in our international alliance. It was a deep fake performed in Hong Kong, in which, using AI, some hackers that right now it's not someone that's in their basement. They are really enterprises. Got to perform a video of a digital. From someone at the head of the company, and they got one of the managers to transfer to $25 million to a fraud account because they could get the information they needed. They did this with an AI model, and they just tricked the people that had to make a click. So I would just want to close telling you to be aware of cybersecurity. It's very, very important. And do have the conversations about privacy, because I think that's mostly relevant between lawyers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Diego. From what you've shared, clearly AI is indeed fueled by data. And this is data that we're feeding it without even realizing it. By using these tools, we are giving it information that it could potentially use. I know that as lawyers, sometimes we want to hold on to certain key clauses that are unique for particular law firms. You discover this brilliant idea and you have a unique clause in your sales agreement that you've not found in other law firms' templates. But then it's this very same template that perhaps you are utilizing AI, one in the use with all the information that we give it, but also to bolster how you are bolstering your cybersecurity defenses to address certain issues that come with having all that information. Yeah, and making sure that you're protecting this sensitive data of Ugandan taxpayers.
I think in the room I'm the only unlearned friend, but I also come from the other side of the equation, among the architects of this AI revolution. So you will allow me to give you a perspective that is perhaps from that other side. I'm an engineer, and in engineering we believe that anything that is routine can be automated, as long as it is routine. You put that at the back of your mind, and then think about this as well, that civilization has always been driven by data. The moment we learned to speak, we did better. The moment we learned to write, we did better than we could speak. When we got computers, we did better. And so as we get more data, we become better as a civilization. And normally in the room, like some of us who are in the 40s and above, you used to stand in a class, and there is this guy who is the custodian of all wisdom. We feared him, we respected him, we listened to everything he had to say, because he had something important. Right now, like Robert, my namesake here, is saying, this has been democratized. But at the end of the day, all of us also listen to the smartest lawyer in the room. Now, what is AI? It is building another brain. In simple terms, that's what it is. That now it is not one human brain seated somewhere that we all have to flock to get insights. We can pick these insights from anywhere. How is this done? A brain has three functions, largely. Number one, it stores information. And if you come to many of us, you will see us building a lot of data centers to store this information. Number two, it processes this information. The smartest person in this room is only smart because they can process information faster than the rest of us. And now we're building a lot of processing power. There's a company called NVIDIA that is doing GPUs right now. It's the biggest and richest company in the world. Number three, it retains this information in memory that at any point in time, if it is needed, it comes off the fingertip. So when we listen to my colleague here, coming up with all these things off the air, we have a lot of admiration for it. And this is what we're doing with computers. That phone that you have has been increasing in storage, and therefore it has more pictures than it used to have before. It now has AI applications within it. Silver here just demonstrated one for us. And all this stuff you can pick up. Let me take you back to my science world a bit. In science, we believe a fact is something that you can observe, that you can measure, that you can repeat and get the same result. Think about gravity. You can observe it, you can measure it, you can repeat, and get the same results. And the world moves on a lot of scientific facts. And begin mapping patterns, trends, and then conclude. In legal areas, I hear you talking about precedents. And so you go to history. Now, when you have a very smart brain, it combines history and fact. And eventually, you cannot simply beat it. And then you can predict the future smarter than you can ever do this. I'm saying this to build context on why we need to actually understand this and therefore find our space. The last thing I will say is that because while we build these things, we normally go back to the first principles to understand what are we trying to build artificial intelligence for. And like I said, you're going to pick data points which are going to inform the patterns and the trends, and therefore the wisdom or the insight that you're trying to draw. So we collect all this data, and then we begin saying, but if I was a human being, how would I handle this? So I would think about this, I would measure that, I would measure that, I would measure that, and get the machine to do that. And eventually, the machine can do what the human being is doing. And that's what's happening now. It's going on scale, large scale. Now, why am I saying this? Because whenever you're doing legal work or even engineering work, you're just doing work. And work for us can be categorized and simplified. I'll give you 9 areas, and you'll tell me if there's a job that doesn't fit in these areas. Number 1, you make something. You just make out something. Whether you're a porter, whether you just make something with your hands, baking, whatever. If you come to our world, we can teach a machine to actually bake because it will emulate the very things that you do. Number 2, you're either transporting or distributing something. You're moving something from here to another place. And so many jobs are just that. You're just moving things. And you can teach a machine to move things. There are self-drive cars now, self-drive trailers, and all this kind of thing. Number 3, you're a communication enabler. One community wants to talk to another. Before we send a guy running, then we created radio, then we created TV, and then mobile phones. Now there is YouTube and all these kinds of things. And you just transferring messages. So TV, radio, and all those things are in that space. I will tell you a very interesting scenario I've observed in the taxi park. Those days there used to be a guy who says, Muvende, then now they put a speaker, recorded, unpaid, constantly going the entire day. And that guy got out of the job. Then there is storing stuff. Then there is brokerage. Now, when I think about legal work, and I've been around legal friends, you do a lot of brokerage. You do a lot of brokerage. The other thing you do, and I think a friend online mentioned, is that you're a trusted keeper. I bring my title and deposit it with you because I trust you. Or my money. Or the other bit, which is the 7th area, is just an expert advisor. Now, when you get a large language model that has all forms of data information and does better analytics, it might actually write a better legal judgment than a judge. And therefore, the other bit, which I think AI hasn't gotten to yet, is being a spiritual nurturer. You come with your trouble, whether you're a pastor or you're a witch doctor. Some people don't like this. You're just spiritually nurturing somebody. Or you're in the public administration. I always think about all these things. They rely on data, history, and processing of information for you to make conclusions. Why this is important is to realize that this is not something we can wish away. It is with us. We just have to figure out how do we fit in this new world. And we engineers, as we create all this processing, memory, and storage of data, the speed can only go faster. The speed can only go faster. So it's a very beautiful thing that you are grappling with these things to find your space in them and to be able to apply yourself. So the question I was asked is really about cybersecurity. security as we know it, like I told you, anything routine gets automated. Security as we knew it was put a wall fence. And then nowadays we have people who have put cameras. These cameras are even doing motion sensing. And beyond motion sensing, they even trigger alarms. So you just keep building layers and layers and layers that are automated. And before we had these machines, we had these paper vaults. And you lock it up, you put a vault and all that kind of thing. We've digitalized that, which Mr. Shirunda here was saying is dematerializing things. They're going away from the physical into material digital things that you don't see. But even there, certain brilliant people want to make sure that they interrupt with the quality and the authenticity of these things. So we have to build layers. So you put data-based security, you encrypt this data, you put firewalls in the place. But recently, and I travel a lot in these technology conferences, I was with a team from Israel, and they are building, because if someone sends you malicious code when they're trying to a cyber attack on you, there is a digital signature around it. What is going on right now is that you can pick that digital signature, interpret it, understand what the attack vector looked like, rebuild it to be able to attack the attacker. And literally, it becomes cyber warfare rather than cyber defense. And this is what's going on. It's going on in the US, rather than these wars with Ukraine and Russia and everywhere. Now, why? And we're doing a lot of things around this, around data protection, around threat intelligence and detection, around digitalizing all returns in the URA, for example. I know a number of lawyers who are not very excited when a few months ago, November, when we got the VAT return and automated it, because there's so many firms that we are surviving on filing returns. And now the taxpayer is saying, and all he has to do is click submit. And not even audit firms, many of them. And so you're seeing a lot of this IFRIS thing coming up, and these guys in Chikubo were saying, you know, business, I think I need to speak some Luganda here, a business ya chama. Ebiyingira ne sente ziriwo mu kaboxi ne zifulumate twagala manye. And now you've brought this thing, and they were telling the president, akuma katunula wano, ne katunula wali. But now this is data coming in, and eventually even your business advisory can be limited because this is the new environment in which we run. So yes, we're doing a lot of these kinds of things. There are things that we're going to keep doing. And for me, I think in conclusion, I would say that we have to think hard about the things that cannot be automated. And that becomes our advantage as human beings. People get stressed, for example, and they need advice. They need counsel. As machines become more intelligent, definitely disputes will arise because we'll be better at finding this risk. So things like ADR, you call it ADR. Those are very important things because you may not be able to wrestle with the facts. But when the facts are there, we can conclude with each other by being trusted parties and all this. So we need to keep thinking about what is it that the machine can't do that we can do, and then build that capacity within. Otherwise, recently somebody was saying that you guys are finding so many people who are doing rentals out of the blue, you're becoming too efficient. But I'm going to pick data from National Water, I will pick it from Umeme, I'll pick it from lands, I'll pick it from NIRA database, and everywhere you go, by the way, whether you're even registering an NGO in Arua, you're going to put your national ID there. I'll also pick that data, and I'll be able to say, hey, so you have 100 houses. Do you have 100 wives? And if you don't, you're a taxpayer. And you need to be able to pay property tax. And now, if you go to the Bank of Uganda, you realize that you're doing a national payments gateway that is going to do instant payments and payment switch, yes. You're going to have instant payments. I'll pick up all that data and I'll know how much volume is running on this phone and between these accounts, and I'll know this is how much money is going through your ecosystem. This is how much you send to your relatives. And I'll even know who your relatives are, because by just triangulating from your grandmother.
You now know why I took BOU to court for crypto. Eh?
And so it's a fascinating world, but it's not something to fear. The guy who used to rear a horse got very scared when a vehicle was invented. In fact, he lost his job. But he reinvented himself and we never died. I think in the grand scheme of things, technology creates abundance for all of us. And it's just that in our age, in our time, this is the technology that is at play. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Robert. From your discussion, what I have picked up is efficiency. And I would like to direct my next question to the two lecturers in the room, and that's Silva and Robert. When we look at AI and what we can use it for, even a law student at law school would definitely be able to utilize it. While some of us were at law school, which was not too long ago, you would have to go to the library, read all these cases. If you didn't read them, Mr. Chunda would send you out of his class or something else, or you could fail an exam. But now we have a scenario where I could feed this question into this AI system, and it will give me the answers that I probably, and so the effort has reduced, and I didn't have to go to the library to get all these All England law report cases. They've summarized them for me, and for me, I'll look at it as a law student, as I'm being efficient. In fact, I'm able to run to Makerere Law School on time and deliver that coursework, which could have been different if perhaps I didn't have this AI tool. So how does this impact legal education? How do you separate that unique ability for people to actually come up with these ideas on their own and not assisted necessarily by this machine?
Okay, I'll go. Yeah, I just want to be brief. I mean, there is a lot. First of all, for me, the way I teach is just not conventional. I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. I don't. If it's been done elsewhere, I mean, what? It's only that we are probably a third world economy, so things come out fast. They come here last, but they've been done everywhere. You see a guy saying, no, this was a groundbreaking transaction, what, you're like, there's nothing groundbreaking. The only, I think, groundbreaking thing we've done here, and maybe Kenya, was mobile money, because that was truly revolutionary. It appealed to ours. So for me, if it's been done anywhere, I will not replicate. What I'm more interested in seeing about my students is that they're alive to these things we are talking about. That's first. And for me in my class, you come as you are. I don't pity dress code. I will not chase you because you have not read the case. The future will chase you. If I will not hassle you much. So, 3 things about lawyers I think I try to address with my students. First and foremost is collaboration. When you hear the language in the room, it's the hoarding language. Oh, I have my precedent I don't want to share. I have just written a whole market guide for AI and it's out there in the public domain. I have done for ESG. Next week, I'm launching one for cloud. This should be IP within Otters. But in these very high trust collaborative environments we are in, you don't make money alone. I can tell you all of us have the same Google here, but I can tell you we all use it differently. If we check the profile of things, all of us can thrive. I don't need to hold the precedent. Actually, for me, I'm very generous. I almost read for the legal fraternity. If I have not tweeted about it, just know it doesn't exist. Any recent case I'll give it to you. Some of us here will be advisors. Some of us will be expert witnesses. Some of us will be tax advisors. Some of us, the 360-degree kind of narrative of abundance around the opportunities that come here. You will never see me competing for work. I will go to a bank, you'll be pitching mortgages, I'll come in maybe with fraud. I'll be telling them maybe a whole thing around maybe digitization processes. There is check truncation now. The checks are also being digitized. You will no longer, the physical checks you do are all being truncated. All those are touch points of value that I do not need to hassle with a colleague over what they're doing. So for me, I think a student who has stepped in my class should have that mind change, the shift from, that to that. The other thing is that law, when I hear the language in the room, it's risk, privacy, security, this. But for me, law teaches you to be professionally skeptic, double check everything or triple check or whatever. It's almost a zero trust environment and do that. But for me, and I think this is what has enabled me to drive things quicker, is that I see risk as a gatekeeper. The client never wants to be told that they can't do what they want to do. They want to be sure how to do it in the most legally way. So when all these things around, privacy, I think mobile money grew and succeeded wildly because it wasn't regulated for a very long time. I actually think it's very unhealthy for infant or nascent economies like Uganda to regulate very quick. China didn't have IP laws until the 2000s. They are now the leading proponents of IP. How they've switched to even practice capitalism better than Americans is just incredible, So for me, a student who stepped from my class will be a less professionally skeptic lawyer, willing to take risk. Why? Because I'm not just training a lawyer for a regulator. I'm also training a lawyer on the product development side. I know little R&D happens in Uganda, but for me, one of the negotiation points I do when I get a tech client is I say every year, at your cost, if you want me to be your lawyer, you're going to sponsor me to your headquarters so I can see what you want to do. That's the competitive edge for me. Of all these clients you've had, I have been to their places. When people see like Facebook here, they only know, the paid. But this is a company, it's building virtual reality, for instance. There is a whole company called Oculus. How will I be able, these guys start taking market entry advice 10, 15 years before they even come into the market. So how will I advise you on virtual reality if you've not shown me what you're doing? Because that's not in, the startups here are really small. They are building robotics and all these nanotechnology. Tell me, show me through the process for 2 weeks. Then I'll come back and be an effective thing. So you'll find that even beyond the money you've paid me, you've trained me, and of course we don't have exclusion clauses. The same knowledge, I will be able to deploy it to another client. That's the kind of lawyer, for me, that I'm training and very cognizant. And I never want to be disturbed by rules and processes around that. Even at LDC, I've had to be ruthless. If you want value from me, then I will run the class the way I want. Not the way you're telling me, no, carbolic smoke ball, raise issues, frame. I'm like, no. We're not going to teach mercantilist things in the way you want, and then the market is criticizing you for delivering a half-baked product, and I have my name on it. I protect that jealously. Even if you're to fire me, I will go. I will not relent on that. And then the third thing I want to say, of all the things that have been said and done, take this today. Many lawyers are very high on IQ, but very low on EQ. Very aggressive, My top inner circle of lawyers are not, of my core 5, none is a lawyer, because most of the conversations with lawyers are aggressive. They want to show they've done the latest deal. They want to show they want, So most of my friends are in accounting audit. I have a lot also of friends in media and journalism, because those access more information than I do, so they are able to advise me and all that. So the lawyer that I'm trying to say is that because the things AI is replacing are the IQ things, not the EQ. AI doesn't have empathy. The first, I was employed. When I left my place of employment, the client, very good account by the way, and she's a very prominent politician of Indian extraction, who's risen and been elsewhere, followed me because she came. I found this problem had been with the farm for a while, that they had rental properties here, they weren't collecting money, okay, they were in arrears and things. I sat and wrote a letter, said, madam, I found this been given to me, I think it was an email. Please let me know how we can work together so that we can, get this. She responds like, I'll be in Uganda in 2 weeks. I would like to meet you. I just thought, yeah, it's a clan meeting. And the lady can say, this is the politest email I've ever received from a Ugandan lawyer in the last 10 years. And deliberately I had refused to pay because many times they were abusive in the communication. It will be to your detriment and chagrin and all these kinds of things. Expect no further warning. And that lawyering needs to end, especially if you want to play in this game, I've also kept a client, because clients do not come to you because you're the smartest guy. Clients, especially if you're in Uganda, a guy like Facebook has a legal team of about 1,500 lawyers across the world. In London, in New York, in Silicon Valley, in Ireland. There is nothing you're going to tell them that they've never had before. And you're always dispensable. You're always dispensable. The economics of the money made in your economy make you dispensable, even if you're a serious lawyer. It's a basic thing. As a guy comes to office, you give them water. You've taken them, I'm a bird watcher. Say, you know what, I know you're in the country for 4 days, let's go bird watching in Port Portal, before we even discuss business. It's during that period that you're connecting, you're bonding, you're getting to realize you like the same bird species, you like the same chameleon and reptile things. It's that connection that clients are going to come to you for. Do you know, I traveled to Uganda in 4 days. I will leave 1,000 shillings extra for this community or if this lawyer builds, I'm happy to sign off his hourly rate of $500, even if I know the market rate is $350. So low, yes, I think, higher EQ, moderate IQ. The IQ is for AI now, okay? Okay? Yeah, I think I leave it at that. This year alone, I think, with LDC, it's not on the curriculum, but the 15 last minutes of my class are leaning in and connecting at an EQ level. What are the things that are bothering young lawyers today, and how are we reacting to them, for instance? If it's wage, if it's salary, those are minor petty issues, People want to be treated like human beings. Everyone wants to be valued with all their different strengths and weakness. High IQ people like me are rarely that thoughtful because you expect everyone to match your level. I can write a legal opinion even without AI in 15 minutes. But I've had associates who struggle even for a day or two. In the past, I used not to work with them. I say you're going to bring, I do it myself. But in that moment, you've missed an opportunity to also show, anyway, enough of that. When I come back, I'll show you 2 more cool AI tools. Let me not bore you with this speeching. Yeah.
So just to touch on the question of what's happening in the academy with regard to the discussion, should students use, I guess your question, Rachel, if I was to paraphrase it, would be, should students use large language models? 5 things. Number 1, what are the approaches across universities? I'll speak from the university side, where I happen to be a recent student and also a member of the academy. The debate is raging along 2 lines. There are those lecturers and academics who believe, please do not use large language models because they weaken your cognitive abilities. In the sense that there was an article around 2005, 2006, I don't know if anyone in the room read it. The title of that article was, "Is Google Making Us Stupid?" I think it should still be online. So there is that school of thought that says you need, especially if you're at the university level, when you come to university, we train you to use your cognitive abilities at their highest, to sharpen them. And that's not going to happen if at the entrance level of your career, you are depending on supercharged technology. There's a part you miss. The counter narrative, or the counter argument to that is that no, by the time I finish my law degree, these tools will be the norm in the workplace, so let me learn how to use them. I am from the school of thought that says you need to learn how to use the tools, but you need to grow fast in your individual analysis. Now, those who are open, the other side is to say, those who are open to using these tools then go to the ethical side. In my earlier remarks, I mentioned the question around the lawyer's role in debating ethics. A professor in the US has done a full 24-page article published on how you can use ChatGPT to write scholarly articles for publication. What he did was he got university students who are his research assistants, put them in a room and said, we are going to write 20 articles in 1 month and send them to journals across the US and see how many of them will get accepted. Take a guess. How many got accepted? All. And then he sat down and said, okay, let's talk about how to use ChatGPT to write a scholarly article. And his first principle is disclose that you are using ChatGPT. Number 2, attribute what have you used GPT to do, what have you not used ChatGPT to do. But the other critical ethical issue, and which is my second point, is double check. One of AI's biggest problems right now is hallucination. And by hallucination, I'm sure by now we all know what it is that it basically makes up a case, and the lawyer got fined in New York, $5,000. $5,000 he could afford to pay. The reputational damage. He will be forever remembered as the lawyer who got fined for citing wrong cases in a New York court.
I wish they were wrong.
You see, that damage you do not recover from. When I was a young lawyer, the example I used to use is, what kept me sharp was to say, how do you explain to the client that your mistake has cost them $1 billion shillings? Now, here, think about the fact that if you stake your name on using, or even the rest of your career, because if you come to me as an employer, and I discover that actually 99% of your work that I am struggling to correct, because, by virtue of experience, there are a few things I know because I have argued them 5 times over. So if you, on your second day of work, come to me, and on this question on defamation, you cite authorities that I know are wrong, just because I've been here longer than you, what you've done is you've given me a very good reason to ask the most important question, why do I need you? So as a student, you think about that and say, am I injuring my career before it starts? Number 3, what are your goals as a student? If what you're trying to learn is to be the fastest person, that's okay. But at what price? Because in the end, every professional services firm in the world, law, engineering, accounting, PwC, all of them, I might as well add Chirun and Company, we sell 3 things: efficiency, expertise, experience. In the end, it comes down to those 3 E's. So if your focus is efficiency, 100%, learn the large language models, evolve with them as they evolve. What will happen is that you will have absolutely no expertise. And that puts you in a certain market. There are lawyers who are fantastic at doing mortgages. It is a very good business. It is very lucrative. And that's okay. If that's what you want to do, master efficiency. If, on the other hand, you want to be the one lawyer who bills $500,000 for saying to the client, I know which pipe to bang. You don't pay the plumber for banging the pipes. You pay the plumber for knowing which pipes to bang. If you want to be the guy who says, pay me $500,000 because I know the technical solution to a complex problem, ChatGPT will help you only to a certain extent. All these, and by the way, there is over 20 large language models, really good ones. So, what we need to be doing is telling our students and young associates, and I'm not picking on, I'm not being generalist, and I hope the young people here don't take offense. But unfortunately, those of us who learned law, when I was in law school, Google was 5 years old. I saved my dissertation on a floppy diskette. I teach a generation that has never seen a floppy. It's just the way it is. So we're not picking on Gen Zs. We're just pointing out that you happen to be the netizens today. This is the world that is just integrated. 20 years from now, completely different conversation. At that point, a friend of mine has predicted in the next 2-3 years, LLMs or large language models will just be another app on your desktop, which you click and use. Things will have changed for now. And please take my views in that context. We need to tell our students, which kind of student do you want to be? Number 4, will the models of assessment change? Honestly, I think the question is still out there. I'm a recent student, as I mentioned, and it was always fascinating. There are 2 approaches. Two of my professors came to the class last lecture and said, for our exam, it is a take home. Please do not use large language models. These gentlemen happened to be advising Google, Microsoft. They were the people who had been involved in the open AI madness of November last year. And they say, we know these tools well. We know what they are capable of, but they will rob you from the opportunity to see, have you actually learned? We have a generation that I am now told wants to abolish labor. They have said this thing of employment, we should get rid of it. No jobs. I mean, that's their world, and that's how they see the world. So will the model of how we assess students need to change? Maybe. In the end, the question we're going to have to ask ourselves and to ask our students in return, what kind of lawyer, what kind of doctor, because we should think about this beyond the law, what kind of professional would you want to be? Would you want to trust with your mother when they fall sick? With your lawyer when many people end up in law school for personal reasons. My mother could not be sure that if she died and my father remarried, we would stay in the home. These might sound strange examples to the young generation. And so what the woman did was she sent her first son to law school. That's actually a real example. True story. And that lawyer is brilliant, and he's one of the powerful lawyers in town today. But that was the motivation for sending him through law school. Now, you're saying that lawyer has been trained on artificial intelligence. And she must go and argue before a judge who is old school, who needs their authorities highlighted, printed. So what we need to do is to say, will the models of assessment change? Honestly, so far as I am aware, the law school where I teach, the jury is still out on that one. And finally, will universities need policies on AI? That seems to be where the discourse is now, to say a university, every university, and for the Gen Zs who are here and want to agitate, what you should do when you enter first year is say, we would like to know what's the university's policy on the use of artificial intelligence and generative artificial intelligence. That will force the universities to say, we need to answer these questions. And by the way, to go back to my earlier points, this is new work for lawyers because somebody has to write the policy. And those are the questions. That is the area that we should be thinking about, and that is where we are today.
For that insightful discussion from the both of you. I think we've really learned a lot today. Our time is fast spent, and I'd like to turn to our audience now and receive any questions. We'll take strictly 3 questions, and I see some hands already up, and then we shall have the panelists respond. Let's be cognizant of the time. Yes, we'll start with you.
Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.
You have some hands behind you.
Thank you, the 2 Roberts, Silver. I come from an analog background. I'm on the board of a baby boomer and next generation. I'm one of those people who started long ago before, I guess you guys were born. I worked for a television company called CableSat and then worked for CNN. Now, during that time, we're doing analog, but then that's when the teleprompters came up. Now, that was my first contact with digital. After that, I worked for Celtel, which became Airtel. Then I worked with MTN. I'm not sure if you're already there. I was in the sales department. Then I moved on. But I'm so analog, and I can't really say old-fashioned, but I wanted to stick to just doing things the traditional way. But I found myself that technology is everywhere. So that's one of the things that actually drove me to go back to finish my law. And I'm an old person, but I'm like a young, quote unquote, graduate from LDC and, recently enrolled. My question is, where do you draw the line? I think you mentioned it. Where do you draw the line as lawyers? Where will judges draw the line that yes, this submission, the pleadings have been done by a human being that Dennis has done them, or it's AI? What's the policy on that? That's number 1. Number 2, we've just carried out an example here after Silver told us to go to Perplexity, and actually somebody gave it to me the day before yesterday. It is amazing. You can put in your details, the food you want to eat, your height, your weight, and it tells you do A, B, C, D. All that is very exciting, but then again, we're feeding it data, and we don't know how it's going to be used. So we've just carried out an example with Ms. Kanso Zimola here. We went to Perplexity and put in Dennis Paulo Kavuma. What does he do? So it brought all my information in 5 seconds. However, the catch was that when he brought the picture, it's not my picture. It's another Kavuma who I know very well, but it's called Paulo Kavuma, but not me. Whereas the information, the bio is correct, it is me, but the picture is brought up, it's not me. So, and last comment. Now, from the old-fashioned point of view, we've just had Olympics, which I think have ended in Paris, or they're about to end. Now, from the old school, when you go into Olympics, you're going to a sport, you do it naturally. So, and all these athletes who've taken sports enhancement drugs, they've been disqualified. That is how I see AI. It's like a sports enhancement drug. Really, that is the only way I see it. So at what level, what is the cutoff point? Thank you very much.
Okay, I think Project Silva talked about professional skepticism in the digital age and how he teaches his students not to be professional skeptics. But my comment is that I think we should maintain the level of professional skepticism because we're also dealing with things like cyber disinformation and misinformation. So I want to put this across to Silva. How do you then train your students to deal with things that are coming up, some of these issues that are nascent but are coming up in the digital age? Cyber misinformation, cyber disinformation. We have the recent example of the Algerian boxer in the Olympics, Iman Khalif, who was alleged to be a woman, but was actually biologically, rather, she was alleged to be a man, and having gone into the competition, and after the Italian boxer just had this is a woman, and at the time, it turned out that she's biologically female, and this whole issue came about because the IDA was disappointed that she had beaten a Russian boxer previously, and they had disqualified that. Even though she presents as female, she's biologically female. So my question is, how are you combating misinformation and disinformation? How do you teach your students to combat misinformation and disinformation in this digital age that we're living in? And then secondly, I just want to appreciate the panel. I think you are very good subject matter experts in this. Professor Robert,
Thank you.
You see, in Chinese tradition, teachers are gods. Small gods. So
This one is the God.
Thank you so much, the panelists. This goes to my friend Silva and Robert. Robert Chirunda. I just want you to make, from your knowledge, to just make some predictions. The bigger part of the third world, especially Africa, democratization of energy access in lieu of the energy needs, which is a pillar to the disruptions we're speaking about, is so much affected by the debate of costs as against the opportunities presented. Because when you look at the people in the third world, while they are making a lot of technological advancements, most of the disruptions we are speaking about, AI and all these others, are so much dependent on energy. Do you think there will be a shift? Because the more people will use the innovations that have been presented, the cheaper they will be, but also the impact will be felt much more by the communities and especially this other part of Africa. What are your predictions in terms of energy access on the question of, on the debate of cost vis-a-vis the opportunities presented?
Okay, let's take a question from that lady.
My name is Josephine Lizige, and my question is on two aspects. That is regulation of AI, and the other one is on the aftermath, how we counter the negative aspects. While listening to the panel, I was nearly convinced that AI is without any negative aspects. Should I say that I nearly crossed over? But my question is directed specifically in two perspectives. That is to the URA and the judiciary. I'm doing a thesis on AI and its effect on the judicial algorithm, and I believe the panel discussion went a bit to that extent. So, question number one. I know it is quite hard when I make reference to AI affecting the judicial algorithm, but I like to give an example. It is like having AI drive your plane to your destination. 1,000 kilometers. I don't know if we would trust AI, or maybe some sort of tech, or it is like being told that you're going before a surgery table and AI or a machine is going to be, holding you or having you under anesthesia and under the knife. Quite critical. So my questions, there are negative connotations to AI, like bias in decision making. And just like Paul asked, if I got the name right, where do we draw the line? How do we regulate AI? Because despite its positive uses, we are going to have a generation whereby we have judicial decisions that are delivered by AI. And URA today determines the success and the existence of businesses. It holds a lot of important data. So leading me to my second question, dependence on tech. Are we going to have a certain category of Ugandan staff in the URA, in the judiciary, that are totally depending on tech? Won't it deter critical thinking skills? We already have a lot of issues. So how are we regulating this EI? And maybe lastly to Mr. Robert from URA, dependence on technical perspectives from AI. There is a lot of technical issues and errors in the realm of tax that can affect a taxpayer to lead their business to collapse. So how do we plan to regulate AI? And lastly, we didn't speak about quite in depth about the negative aspects attached to AI. What is the aftermath? In the event that clients get a decision that is potentially generated by AI, what is the aftermath? In the event that businesses are collapsing because URA is relying on AI-generated information, what is the aftermath? Because without regulation, I know that we might be headed for a dead end despite the positive perspectives attached to it.
Thank you, our panelists. I'm called Frank, and I come from a human rights perspective. That's one area of law that is not well represented here. But thankfully, we had someone on there, Nunes, who came close to becoming, who came close to being described as a human rights lawyer. For me, I like all these technological advances. But here we are, we have three good gentlemen. They are driving us like driverless cars. And there's I'm seeing no one here saying, no, you're taking us so fast. We are leaving people behind. I'll give you some examples, I'll be fast. We know what AI can do. Things like bias, she's alluded about it, discrimination, and things to do with data. He talked about typing in his name and giving us a different idea. Now I'll give you one very, very, very something that could happen to you maybe tomorrow if we embrace AI. Imagine a Ugandan policeman with a loaded gun. He's been given an AI device. He checks it. He looks at him. He thinks he's the criminal he's been looking for. He's been told, bring this criminal dead or alive. What will he do? We don't want to talk about the results, yeah? Then we'll go to other issues involving AI. We've heard about mental health issues. Sadly, no one has talked about mental health. If you look back, this is not a conspiracy theory. These gentlemen, the CEOs in the Silicon Valleys, they have protected their families from what they are giving us. You can read about it. All of them have protected their children. Their children have got years that they are being introduced to what we are being fed maybe at 10 or whatever. So it's not all rosy that AI is coming. We should all embrace. Yes, we love technology to simplify things, but we should look at the negative implications of I have the right to be forgotten. But if I type in my name in whatever, and it brings everything. Someone talked about the fellow who couldn't, who paid the $500 for bringing a bad law. That guy, I think, would like to be forgotten. But will he be forgotten? He has the right to be forgotten. Yeah? So if he wants to bring if he wants to be arrested, like you remember the case that happened with Google. Someone wanted to be forgotten, and Google saying, "No, we can't forget you." Remember what happened? So will this guy be forgotten? So for me, we love it, but we need moderation. We're gonna have children. Children are suffering from mental health. Me, when I say I'm going to bed now, I'm going on my phone. I say I'm going to bed maybe at midnight. By 2 o'clock, you find me awake. I'm on Twitter, and I've tried to detoxify myself, but I'm failing. Honestly, I go to bed. I'm saying I'm going to bed. Twitter for 2 hours before you realize it's coming to 4 o'clock, and you have to get up at 6 o'clock. I'm very sorry I have to stop here.
Thank you very much for your questions. We just have one question from the online audience. Someone has asked, someone has asked, what courses do you recommend for lawyers to learn more on AI? I'll address that question to Diego. Maybe we'll start with Diego responding to this question, then we'll go on to the panelists, and you can address each of the questions that have been directed to you. Yes, Diego.
Perfect. Well, I'm more like do your own research kind of guy. I do get online a lot and start watching videos, etc. Especially with AI. There's a lot of people that are doing a lot of education. More standard or academic, I would recommend looking up the courses of HarvardX. That's the online platform of Harvard University in the US. They do have very interesting courses about computer science and computer science for lawyers. They do speak kind of both languages, the people doing those courses. I believe that maybe they do have something on AI, but I don't know about any courses in Uganda. Maybe you have something that works better for you there.
If I might start off the round of responses really quickly, and I'll start with where my brother stopped. First of all, you're right. The risks you point out are real. And yes, they're being litigated. In fact, in Silicon Valley, the debate is hot. Those who are interested here, look up the Netscape litigations in the US Supreme Court that concluded at the end of last year. Fantastic questions on mental health and technology and things like that. The question is anybody asking those questions in the Ugandan context, and what would that litigation look like? That's a debate I am happy to have in a different framework. But and I'm going to tie this to my brother, Mr. Luogo's question. You see, the debate around, you raised a very interesting question. If we were to predict what's this going to look like in the context of energy consumption and things like that, I would like to respond that by highlighting two things. Number one, there's a huge policy question that has arisen elsewhere. I haven't had it on the continent yet, but elsewhere there's a huge policy question as to whether the rise of AI in particular is resulting into what is now being termed as tech colonialism. It's a fairly complex question because the colonialism now, the question is, what is happening now? How different is it? What the big giants are doing, Google, Microsoft, whatnot. If you read the New York Times complaint, the New York Times suit against OpenAI, Microsoft, whatever, they say Google, Meta, OpenAI, all of you are working together to destroy the IP that we've built over 170 years. What the companies are doing is what the Berlin Conference did. Why I mention that debate is because I believe that debates on universal basic income and things like that are going to result into policy questions as to whether there is a fundamental duty either on the companies or on nation states to redistribute power around AI, to redistribute energy needs and demands. But the second corollary to that is the question around power, how we use our power. It is the responsibility of the government of Uganda to make sure that it meets energy needs in this country. It is the responsibility of the private sector, you and me, to realign where we fit in the discourse. My frustration, I was just telling my brother Robert that my frustration with most AI conversations in this part of the world is that they usually descend to where we ended, which is we sing the Song of Lamentations without saying, okay, all of that is true. But where do we sit in this conversation? Every time I walk into a room and I hear risks, those risks are real, I don't deny them. The question is, what solution should we build to solve that question? For example, the risk around bias has an obvious answer, which is human in the loop. That conversation, in fact, for me, the discussion now on AI, my view, and I could be wrong on this, is that the risks are well mapped. Those who are looking carefully know the risks. They are now well defined. The answers, some of them have emerged. Some of them are simply too complex. Nobody is going into drilling down. That's where the conversation is, as well as the opportunity. My view is, don't sell Africa short. Africa can innovate. Africa can write. Africa can regulate. Africa can deliver. One of the things AI has done that is actually incredibly powerful is reducing the cost of what it would take to do certain things. So if one flips this and says there is all these threats, let's talk about solutions, then the discussion changes. So, by the way, I believe that for me as a matter of policy, my understanding, and the geeks can correct me, the right to be forgotten is unrealizable. Now, technically speaking, it is not possible that even if Google erased you off all its servers, you would disappear from the internet. First of all, it is incredibly difficult for Google to erase you. Even if they could, Meta would have you. Even if they could, somebody else will have you. That's just where it is. So some things, but that's a controversial argument for another day. I will end with this. And I would like to throw a challenge to everyone who's listening to us presently and in the room and virtually. In 2015, how many years ago? 9 years ago, I had a lengthy conversation with our colleague and senior colleague and dear friend of mine, Council Daudi Mpanga. I said Daudi, maybe David F. Kempanga, to distinguish from, because we have two David Mpangas on the Ugandan bar. David F. Kempanga and I had a discussion where I asked him a question. And my question to him was, where do you see the market in 15 years? And he gave me a conversation I will never forget. His starting point was, Robert, let's first agree on what binds us. And he said to me, we need to agree that I am not your competition, you are not my competition. And he didn't mean I'm a big farm, you're a small farm. No. He said, the moment we divide the discussion along those lines, we've missed the point. He said, we have to agree that our competition, you and me, is a certain young lady called Caroline Smith sitting in a law firm in New York, figuring out how to do her next big deal on the African continent. Those of you who have sat in rooms in these big firms or who work with big firms, you know that White and Case will send you a questionnaire, you will fill it in, they will bill you as a disbursement in the fee note, and they will invoice for work that you've actually worked on. That era is gone. Now, our competition is no longer a lawyer sitting in a cubicle in White and Case in New York. Our competition is non-lawyers figuring out how to remove us from the equation. So, I ask you, knowing that, where do you see the market in 15 years? I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I'll ask the rest of the panelists to take their questions and also give their parting shots. I'll take it that, Robert, you have given your parting shots.
All right, thanks a lot. There are definitely aspects that must be addressed. I don't think anyone is saying that AI is perfect. Just the way human beings are imperfect. What AI is doing is really just to create a brain that mirrors the human brain. Maybe just for simplicity, let me put it this way. To build a machine learning model or artificial intelligence is a combination of 3 areas. Number 1 is mathematics, and particularly statistics. Number 2 is computer programming. And the third one is domain expertise, regardless of whether it's law, medicine, or tax administration. And if you remember your statistics, in very simple terms, it works on probabilities. And probabilities means that you predict. And so when you're building models, you're trying to make it as accurate as possible. But where there is probability, there is always room for error. And therefore, that error is an area that can cause challenges. Why I'm putting this out there is that it's not right for us to believe that AI is perfect. It's not right to believe, especially because you do sampling for you then to train a model to be able to deliver what a human would normally deliver. And so if you're doing sampling, many of you are researchers, you know that you can actually sample the wrong data set. If I went in a community where there is only ladies, and that's where I'm picking my sample, I'll make wrong conclusions about men because I just picked the wrong sample. If I walk into a room and there's one tall guy and the rest of us are average, I'm going to make a wrong conclusion that all human beings in this community are short. And so there are those technical things that we deal with even when we're building these models, to make sure that you're doing the sampling right, to make sure there's not bias in the data that you're using to train the model. And sometimes the technical people also get it wrong. And that's why you always need validation and iterative building of this AI to make them more accurate. I think recently you saw, a few months ago, some people were putting some mathematical questions to ChatGPT, and it was getting them wrong because of decimal figures. If you go now, it has already been improved to deal with those kinds of things. So it's a continuous learning process. And there are other things that are not in my domain. Like I think Netflix has a documentary called The Social Dilemma, talking about the impact of some of these tools that we use every other day, Facebook and all that, on the human brain. These are things that we do not know that are coming as a result of the technologies that we're being exposed to. There are children right now, especially in the West, that are getting stress disorders because they're always on tablets. We didn't know about this, just the way we didn't know about the accidents that will come when vehicles were introduced on the road. So it's a learning curve. It is, like we say, creating opportunities for other dimensions of work, which then we need just employ ourselves to. And lastly, around URA, introducing AI into the URA, isn't this going to cause more good, rather more trouble than the good? The truth is that the contentions that we always have with taxpayers are based on accuracy of information. Accuracy, I imported this or you didn't import that. You misinterpreted the law or you interpreted it wrong. When you think about all these things, tax law, for example, is so mathematical. It is a percentage of that absolute number, and so interpretation of it can become a mathematical equation in every way. And therefore, when you, for example, build an AI as a risk engine to be able to pick out outliers and errors and anomalies, you are helping us come closer to a picture that is very accurate, and therefore minimize disputes. So in the grand scheme of things, it's an advantage compared to when we're doing it as humans and bring all our mistakes into that. Number two, when you interact with URA, we do not have such a great brand of integrity and honesty out there. But simply because you are dealing with more human beings than machines, and every time for us we've observed, every time we automate processes and delegate tasks to machines, one of the results that comes out is integrity in the process. And that's something that we definitely want to pursue more to make sure that we do that. Number three, when you think about new taxes coming into tax law, what tends to happen is that there's a lot of gut feeling and innuendos and thought that perhaps this thing will work. And therefore a law comes. We've seen things like, say, OTT. They come as a big wave, and eventually we realize it's not serving the purpose, and it's withdrawn. Now, in machine learning, what you do is actually not to impose opinions on data. What you do is to understand what is the data saying that will work. I'll give you a quick example. I think many of you are familiar with invoice trading. It's something that is around tax law quite a bit. And we're asking ourselves, but what is causing this thing? Is it lawyers? Is it accountants? Is it banks? Who is doing this? And we built a machine learning model, an AI basically. Just give us all the data and just mark this guy as an invoice trader, this guy as an invoice trader. Now look at all the data that we have and tell me what are the key drivers for this thing. Guess what it turned out to be? Abuse of the VAT registration process. And so instead of me sending enforcement out there into your businesses and harassing your clients, all I need to do is to make sure there is due diligence in the VAT registration process. I could never have known that if the AI model didn't tell me that much. So I think there is a lot of value that we're going to have to draw out of this. And as we drive compliancy, not just even for the taxpayers that exist, because AI is also helping us to find those people who are out of the tax bracket, which means then that we do not raise taxes on the existing base. We can now go after those who are, operating in the market with a lot of value that are not in the tax bracket. And that is an advantage for everyone. And for some people who are into employment, I am your guy. I don't want a new tax on you. I'm going to have to find everybody else who is not contributing, and they come to the tax bracket, so that we don't kill the small goose that lays the golden eggs and leave the others roaming in the wild. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'll also run through the questions, but while at it, I want you to try out 2 other AI cool things. I think you can Google Gamma AI and go to that link. I think this can go to Gamma. G-A-M-A. Then this group can try out Midjourney, midjourney.com, and you tell me what you will find. Midjourney.com or Midjourney AI. Midjourney, M-I-D, mid, like middle, Midjourney, yeah, one word. So I think some of those apps will answer the question around professional skepticism, disinformation and misinformation. So for every tech that comes and creates problems, you'll have solutions for that tech or a counter to that technology. So you'll find that maybe with Gamma, if you maybe dispute a source of information, you think it's misinformation or disinformation, there are actually AI tools that can verify that information for you. That's how we've been able to catch people maybe who've given speeches using AI or court decisions. But even pictures influencing, say, maybe copyright litigation, if the dispute is on maybe who published it first, you can be able to take that picture and put it into any of those tools, and it spews you all the publication details, the camera that took it, the time, the place, everything. So yeah, we keep the professional skepticism. That's what we're trying to do, is the due diligence and but the tools will definitely change into that. Interesting question from Mr. Luogo on ESG, and yeah, indeed, data centers are one of the highest consumers of energy, power, and all this. But in there is also opportunity, So for me, I've seen two opportunities. I think in April this year, Microsoft approved an investment of $1 billion into the Kenyan economy to build data centers. And locally, we've seen legislation. Like if you're to see the National Payment Systems Act, you might think these are theoretical things. If you're to look at the National Payment Systems Act of Uganda, all entities under that framework must have in-country data centers, because BOU usually found problems while resolving banks that the data will be housed offshore, so you don't have full visibility, especially for depositor protection fund purposes, claims management, and things like that. So you could see that as a lawyer, that sort of cloud environment, data centers here, definitely will drive demand. You've seen guys like Raxio starting to come in, I think Rock Cloud and things like that. So on the ESG front, I think it also sheds more light on alternative or clean energy, which will drive the discussion around green energy financing and things like that. So for me, when I find young lawyers engaged in those types of discussions, I think for me, those are the ones I want to participate in. I don't want to participate in the discussion of, they're paying me 500,000. They're paying you 500,000 because that's what you deserve. You've not, so the thing is that if you're creating the value and paying attention, I think the opportunity is there for even work that's not been doing. The best thing that will happen to the legal sector in Uganda is if that national land information system goes up and kills conveyancing, lazy lawyering, just drafting mortgage deeds and things and submitting them. And that's the best thing that will happen to the legal profession in Uganda. It will free us to think of things that are happening. People are going to the moon. What's the Uganda Law Society position? Uganda is a signatory to the Moon Treaty as early as the 1960s. Satellites are going up, they are beaming over Ugandan airspace. I mean, what is the ULS position? On, guys like Starlink have applications pending before the UCC. We have 2,000 satellite companies that have expressed interest in obtaining authorization for content, for aviation, for weather forecasting. That weather pattern you get on your Google is satellite driven. Surely, the law governs everything from exhumation of dead bodies to the moon and everything in between. How can you, if a guy says I'm unemployed, you're like, honestly, you don't know the gold you're sitting in. Law is just the gift that keeps on giving, that you just have to harness. Maybe lastly, what I will talk about will be, of course, around risk and things. When we are regulating technology, we use the principle of technology neutrality. Right now, you are talking of AI. A few days ago, right now as we're speaking, people are innovating new things. The law cannot keep up with that. So we regulate the principle. What are you trying to do? If it's data protection and privacy, we have the Data Protection and Privacy Act. It's already told you need to get express consent before exposing people. They've also told you cannot externalize data to jurisdictions that do not give the same protection like Uganda. They've already told you cannot have 100% in digital processing of data. There has to be, especially for marketing purposes and things like that. If you're to look at the AU framework, they've even given you an AI risk rating. The top thing, there is prohibited AI use for subliminal purposes. I don't know, subliminal is, that unconscious use, like for that extreme law enforcement. Then you have this predictive AI ChatGPT you're using that's common. So if I'm to predict, Mr. Luogo, I think still, just as it is with most products, Africa will remain a net importer. consumer. We're on the bottom end of the pyramid for that. I don't see much local innovation happening. Yeah, we are trying, but yeah, if just, I don't know if you put into AI now, ask what is Uganda's contribution to the total content on Google. Just Google, it's not more than 1%. How will you influence things? If they colonize your knowledge and thought process and all this, because you know African knowledge has remained oral, we meet. I can assure you right now, yeah, now we have at least this on YouTube. But in the past, I've been to some events, you come, this year they invite you to speak on a topic, next year they invite, next year. Now for me, the caveat I'm putting here is that for me to allow another ULS invitation next year, I want to come here when we are getting reports and testimonies of what colleagues have done for their law firms in AI, who has used Copilot, what's ULS doing. ULS should be moving to a discussion even around maybe boutique or solo practitioners that cannot afford these solutions. How are we persuading law counsel to allow us buy maybe one joint cloud and all of us pay pro rata? Because ICMIS will drive lawyers to the cloud. You will not need any regulation because your Gmail accounts will get full within 6 months. If they add on land and URSB, you will find that you cannot run a law firm without any Google Cloud or facilities. But where is the ULS in all this? You know, the next president should be able articulating an agenda saying for firms that can't afford, this is our solution for taking ULS to the cloud. Why? The banks are already in cloud. The telcos are already in cloud. You've had URA is already going in cloud. You've had, so why should we allow to be left behind? I don't want to be the lawyer making money alone in the city. You match in a losing team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Silva. And just parting shots from you, Diego. Just 2 minutes.
Yeah, sorry, I just got lost with it cut. I just wanted to thank you for the invitation, for the great conversations we had today. A special thanks to Kenneth Munhagi who made the link and got me invited. I did learn a lot about Uganda, about your tech and legal environment today. So I wanted to say thank you and just the same closing I did when I did my presentation. Keep aware of the data we use, privacy and its protection, and do have conversations. I think we're going to create new legal frameworks and very interesting. And we as lawyers have to be the ones taking the main roles and participation in these new frameworks. So just a big thank you. I know we are late. So have a great event today.
Right. Thank you so much, Diego. A hand clap for Diego, who's joining us from Argentina. So ladies and gentlemen, I think we have learned a lot from our dear panelists. Just a few points for us to consider. The first being that AI is not new, as Silva mentioned, and it's also here to stay. So we need to be aligned to the current times. And as lawyers, we need to be alive to it. We have also seen how different sectors are utilizing AI, not only our government institutions, but also banks. We have also received that warning that soon certain legal work, or if it's not already happening, is going to be replaced soon. Banks are already automating many things. And so it looks like certain work that looked like it was necessary to do in the past is definitely going to change, and we need to look at different ways to approach banks and advise. Then just lastly, the fact that we should be cautious with how much information we give, as Diego mentioned, to these AI sources, just so that our data is protected. And we're also able to learn about the different cybersecurity concerns that come up with the utilization of AI. We've also looked at how AI has impacted legal education, and the fact and the two trains of thought, as Robert advised, and what institutions and the educators in our midst today need to be aware of. There was so much more to learn. Thank you so much for your active participation, and to the online audience, thank you so much for being part of our team. We had over 100 attendees at the beginning of the session, and we're so grateful for that as well. We'll close with a special thank you to our panelists. Thank you for making the time to be here today. And we really benefited greatly from that insight that you've given us on this topic. We close therefore, ladies and gentlemen, have a great evening. Thank you.
And from us on the panel, may we just shout out to Rachel, who was fantastic at coordinating us, making sure we were all aligned. We stressed her a lot about starting late. Also, shout outs to Diego, if he's not gone off already, who is in a different time zone and has had to bear with us for this time. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mr.